The JEDO Board of Directors meeting will come to order. Actually, this is our quarterly meeting, so there are other aspects of the business agenda that we'll be handling tonight. The first item on the agenda is the roll call. The clerk would read.
Mayor Larry Wolgast.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Karen Hiller.
Here.
Councilmember Michelle De La Isla.
Here.
Councilmember Jeffrey Cohen.
Here.
Shawnee County Commissioner Shelley Bueller. Here. Shawnee County Commissioner Kevin Cook.
Present.
Shawnee County Commissioner Bob Archer.
Here.
Councilmember Sandra Clear.
Here.
Councilmember Sylvia Ortiz.
Here.
Councilmember Jonathan Shum.
Here.
Councilmember Elaine Schwartz. Councilmember Richard Harmon. And Councilmember Brandon Jensen.
Here. Councilman Harmon indicated to me in writing that he could not be here tonight due to a business engagement. We want to welcome all of our guests here tonight for joining us for our meeting. The second item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. They were posted online and then were also sent to the board members. Are there any additions, corrections to the minutes of the April 29 meeting? Seeing none, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'd make a motion to approve the
I'm sorry.
Okay.
We'll have
I will yield to Councilwoman Del Isla.
Councilwoman Del Isla
I would move for approval.
moves to approve the minutes, and we'll say
I'll
Commissioner Cook seconds. We have a person signed to speak on this action item, Mr. Ledbetter.
I'll wait my right.
All right, is passed on that. You have the item before us. Voting members, all those in favor of the approval of the minutes, please raise your right hand. Opposed? It is unanimous that we have approval of the minutes. The second item on the agenda is the presentation by the two firms in response to our RFP, Avalanche Consulting and Garner Economics. I wanted to mention to the board members that we have a copy of the memorandum that looks, I have it right here, that you see there that lists the resolution. I think it's under agenda item, we have the discussion. Under agenda item 4, and that is the basis on which the consulting firms made their response to our proposal. Yeah. So you have that in front of you. Are there, I did want to say that we ask the presenters to make a presentation of approximately 20 minutes. We are not timing them, but we want to think in those particular terms. Then we will have approximately 20 minutes of question and answer if it needs to be that long, so that we can move the meeting on. So there you can see about what the time frame is, and then following that would be the discussion. When they make their presentations, we will hold questions until the presentations have been made, and then we'll have the time for question and answer. Is there any questions? Are there questions about the process that we're going to be using? Okay, we ask that they do not be in the room for each other's presentation, so I'll ask Mr. Garner to step out of the room, and we'll have the out of earshot. And then we will start with the first presentation. Amy Hollowell of Avalanche Consulting. Welcome. Glad to have you here.
Thank you very much. It's very good to be back. Dean, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine. Can you hear me?
Yes.
That's right. We have two persons on
We
the
actually
presentation.
have two people, me and my shadow, Dean Foote. No, he's our business partner on this project, and he wasn't able to attend in person, but I wanted him to be here to introduce himself and hear the conversation and answer any questions you have about his consulting firm. So let me get this presentation started for us. All right, here we go. Well, first of all, it is so good to see everybody again. It was just a few months ago when we were here. It's good to be back in Topeka. You have a little warmer weather for us than January. And thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm so excited about the chance to get to work here again and to work with you on this important project. As you'll recall, the last time I was here, Tony and I and Noel gave a presentation of our findings of an economic analysis we did for Topeka and Shawnee County, and also our recommendations on what we think are the best target industries for your future economic development efforts. That presentation sparked a discussion among all of you about the need to kind of take a step back and look at the big picture of what your vision is, of what your goals are in economic development, of how you guys talk about economic development, and what your tools are for economic development, and so forth. And I guess after that, you got together in a committee, came up with the RFP. We were thrilled to get the RFP, and they still like us. And actually, we're even more thrilled to be one of the finalists. So thank you for the opportunity. I have to say one thing before we start. As a strategist and an owner of a strategic planning firm, our client's success is the most important thing to me as a consultant. And I'm not just saying that. If you guys don't succeed, then we don't succeed. So we're in it to win it with you. And ever since my first assignment with Go Topeka, we have had assignments here. We have had experience in your community. They've been analytical in nature. And right now, I have to tell you that during that time, I've always wished that I had an opportunity to dig deeper and look at how you guys are organized, look at the full picture of what your toolkit is, and help you move forward as an organization, help you become one of the best economic development initiatives in the country. And that's what we've done for other clients, and I'm really excited that we have a time to do that here with you, especially after we have committed time to your community and we are big fans of what you are. So that's what I'd like to start with. We promise that we're going to give you our very best work. And we also promise that throughout the process, we're going to be as candid and honest with you as possible, because our work and your work won't succeed if we're anything but that. All right? Mm-hmm. So I know you have a huge, busy agenda tonight, and I'm going to stick to this 20 minutes, maybe even a little shorter, and then reserve some time at the end for Q&A. But I do want to start off with a refresher about who we are as a firm, and then let Dean introduce himself and his experience. Then I want to go through our proposal a little bit, in a little bit of detail, the scope that we're proposing and how it meets the objectives of JEDO and your other stakeholders, then open it up for Q&A. Does that sound good? All right. So Avalanche Consulting is, in my opinion, the nation's leading economic development strategist. I started the firm in 2005 after 10 years as vice president of another economic development strategic planning firm. Together, our team has over 50 years of experience as economic development analysts and strategists for economic development organizations and communities across the country and abroad. And we're really proud to say that since we opened our doors, our clients have created over 260,000 jobs. So we track, once we start working with a client, we track their job creation, and it's quite remarkable how well they have done, considering what's happened in the economy in the last 10 years. We've also worked with over 200 communities. So what we bring to you is an intimate understanding of how economic development organizations work and how the best ones succeed. Our services include strategic planning, which includes some of the things that you're looking for today: organizational assessments, best practice analyses, marketing and branding, looking at your entire package of economic development tools, and product development here on the ground. And we also do marketing and branding strategies. We do a lot of custom research and analysis, which is what we've done here in the past. We also have a software company called Headlight, and we do custom data portals for economic development organizations and communities. We started Headlight about 6 years ago, and we've blossomed that into a business that's doing work across the country. We also do a lot of retreat facilitation and training for economic development organizations, and I think that's important to say because part of our process with you will be engagement of your stakeholders, and I want you to feel comfortable that we can go out and talk to a large diversity of people and backgrounds and be able to get their opinion and make them feel comfortable talking to us about their opinions and honest with us. We're truly passionate about economic development. I think you'll see that as you work with us. It's just in me. I mean, it's part of what I do. In fact, my husband works for our firm, so we have kind of a family business and a family practice around just making sure that our clients are as successful as possible. And we also want to work with clients that are equally as energized and inspired as we are. We find that combination is magical when it happens. And we see that energy here. So we're excited about working with you all. As I said, we've worked in over 200 communities across the country, and these are just a few, just a sampling of who we worked with in the last couple of years. I did want to point out a few. I actually encourage you to call any client on our list, anyone, and hear what they have to say about their experience working with you. I have no doubt that they'll say wonderful things. Most of these clients are still clients of ours in some way or another, or at least we're great pen pals because we're always available by phone or email to answer any questions they have. And most of them also, when we finish a strategic plan, we go back to the community at least once a year to do a checkup and make sure that they are on track, and we monitor their metrics and everything. So these are just a few of our clients. The project team that we have working with you, you'll see some familiar faces. So Tony and Noelle and I will be working with you because we all have the experience working here. We bring that knowledge with us into this assignment. We also have Dean on our project team. Dean is a national site consultant. He has over 30 years of experience in site consulting and economic development strategy, and he brings that perspective to our team. We just want to make sure that you had as well-rounded of a perspective on what's going on here as possible. So with that, Dean, I'm going to invite you to share your experience with us. And Dean, let me know when you want me to switch slides, and I'll click for you.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Amy. Hi, everybody. I wish I was there, but I'll have to do it by phone today. And it's interesting because I've known Amy for a number of years.
Can you guys hear him okay?
Talking about this project a couple months ago, I guess, when I was at a Site Selectors Guild event in Austin, Texas. And I think it's important to know that not only do I have my own company, approximately 6 years old here in Phoenix, but I'm also a board member, former board member and treasurer of the Site Selectors Guild. It's a company we put together of the top site selectors in the world, and we hold a number of events around the country, and we have bring a lot of site selectors and economic developers together to talk about business issues. And so I hope you'll put that on your calendar for future possibilities. We actually have a fall forum coming up in Philadelphia, October 26th, 7th, and 8th. And if you're interested, let me know, and we'll get you signed up. But we've done a lot of site selection and economic development projects all across the country. And as you mentioned, the reason our project team is so experienced is that I'm old. I've been doing this for 30 years. So, and it's been obviously a lot of fun. I enjoy doing it every day. But I think it's important to know that we've done a lot of projects. And maybe you can flip that slide, Amy.
Done.
And yeah, talking about just a few projects that we've done, some big names that you recognize there and some that you may not. But I know we are just in the process of completing an inland port project in New Mexico. It hasn't been announced yet, but officially, but it's going to be a big project for that state and very important for the economy of the Southwest. We also have done a lot of work for Walmart, you see there. I'm trying to think of one of the closest projects I would have worked to your area with then. Probably, we did a project in North Platte, Nebraska a number of years ago. You might be familiar with that one. We also did one in St. James, Missouri, not too far away. Big distribution centers. They projects, and that's really what we do. We're trying to put the best companies together with the best communities, and that's why we also do economic development, because we want to identify the very best communities out there to put these projects. And keep in mind that site selection is very much a people business. We get to know each other, we get to know a little bit about what the company's doing, what the company needs, and then we find communities that we know and have studied in the past that we know they'd be a good fit for. So it's a matching process. And I'm always looking to learn more about communities. I've looked at Topeka in the past, but I've never really spent a lot of time there and would like to get to know the community a lot better. And I guess maybe the final thing I'll say before I move on here is that, think about it. Today, there are consultants and companies that are looking for a place to put a Midwest project. It's going on right now, and you want to be on that list. You want to be on that list for the next possible project. How do you get to know these companies and these consultants better so that when they're thinking about it, they'll think of you? And that's really the way it works, and we want to help you do that, certainly. Maybe flip that again.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and just a few economic development projects that we worked on and listed here. We've done a lot of certified sites programs around the country. We're actually working on one in California right now. Essentially, certified site identifies the very best industrial site, get that site ready to go, and so all the permits in place, zoning, et cetera. And so the project's ready to go now. You don't have to wait a couple months or 6 months for it to be ready. The prospect can look at that site right now and sell it or buy it and move on with the project. So that's really important. We finished a big project in Tennessee where we certified about 30 sites. And so it's a really important project. We do a lot of that kind of work. You see Center Point of Canada in Winnipeg there. I'm thinking about them because some of their team is in Chicago this week calling on companies and consultants that we're working with them on. So that's really one of the keys, obviously, is putting communities in front of companies and consultants. You can talk to them, get to know them, and tell them about your community and all the great things that are going on. Again, it's a people business, one-on-one interaction, really important in the kind of work that we do. And just looking at the list there, Moraine, Ohio, is one a few years ago, but just recently, there's a company called Rio, Chinese glass plant, that's moving about 800 jobs into the plant that we assessed there a number of years ago. So it might take a little time sometimes, but jobs do occur if you do the job right.
Great. Thank you, Dean. Thank you. Great. So a little bit about our proposal I wanted to share with you, and then of course open it up for questions if you have any additional questions about details of our proposal. But our objectives for this, and I wanted to share them with you because I hope that they also reflect your objectives. But first of all, this project will give you a unified vision and unified goals for economic development. With any community having that discussion, having a unified vision, having unified goals, and also even a unified definition of economic development, right? What does economic development mean? In some of our conversations here, we'd ask people that, and their response was all over the board. So we want to unify that, and that helps you all make decisions about economic development better, right? Because you're all talking about the same thing when you're using the same vocabulary words and so forth. So that'll be an objective of the project. What we hope is that you have a more effective and efficient economic development initiative here in Topeka and Shawnee County. And we want to get you to the point where you're one of the best in the nation, and it's entirely possible with the assets that you have here. We want to also make sure that you have a more updated economic development toolkit, so things like incentives, or how are you marketing and communicating internally and externally. We want to make sure that those are best in class as well. For us, it's really important that economic development initiatives are inclusive, and that's a word you'll hear a lot from us. We have a holistic view of economic development. We don't think it's all about business recruitment. It's important to have that understanding, but it's also important to be focused on entrepreneurship and local business retention and expansion. And we also see economic development in a holistic fashion where things like, we actually say that quality of life and economic development are intimately connected with each other. And I think you're experiencing some of that here, right? Your quality of life affects your ability to attract and retain talent, which affects your ability to grow businesses. So if economic development doesn't address that in some way and look at it and involve those people in the discussion, then you're missing a gigantic opportunity. We also want to make sure that this project corrects some of the negative trends that we've seen. There's some good trends here, and there's some things that are kind of warning flags, and we need to make sure that we're addressing those. And I'll share those with you here in a second. And ultimately, we want to make sure that whatever you're doing in terms of economic development gives taxpayers the highest return on their investment. They've said, yes, we'll support economic development with our dollars out of our pocket, but we want to make sure that this is turning into something that's much higher, that the multiplier effect of our dollars is much higher than what we've put into this. You'll remember these slides. I'm not going to go into them in too much detail, but a few of the things that we were seeing here when we did our economic analysis is that jobs are growing here, and they're growing at a pretty good clip. But you're losing population also. In the last couple of years, you've seen a loss of population in Shawnee County, and that's the kind of thing that starts to concern you when you talk about business growth. So we have to think about in this process what it takes to get talent to stay here and talent to move here. We also saw some rising poverty levels, a growing gap. Right? So the people who are doing well are doing very well, but the people who have been in poverty remain in poverty, and the situation's getting a little bit worse for them. So it's something, again, inclusive. We want to make sure that this is an initiative that considers the needs of all people who live here. Wage levels here are lower than average. So the targeting and what kind of tools we use to attract businesses and everything need to be focused on some higher wage jobs, and also jobs that provide a complete pipeline of people who can get trained and move up their career ladder. Just a reminder of the targets that we've recommended. These are all fine and good, but if you're not structured in a way to go talk to these companies, if you don't have the stuff on the ground that these companies want, then it's going to be a steep road to climb. So we're going to take into consideration these targets when we do our analysis. We believe that there is a huge opportunity here to create an even more vibrant community and increase economic opportunities for all citizens. And that means increasing wage levels, decreasing poverty, addressing those key issues that I just showed you from the data, continuing job growth in higher wage industries, building entrepreneurship infrastructure. We also want to make sure that we're providing our employers with a best-in-class talent pool. We have a ultimately more vibrant, positive community. So we're going to work with you to create a more effective and efficient economic development program that helps you guys address some challenges and seize your opportunities. And we have a 3-step process that we're going to lead you through, hopefully starting in June, if we can move that fast, and be completed by late September. First of all, a discovery where we learn as much as we can about the things that we don't know about Topeka and Shawnee County right now. Then moving into a strategic plan for you, and then moving into actual action. And we've got some things we can do to jumpstart this initiative and make sure that this isn't a study that sits on the shelf, but it's an action strategy that has life and legs and generates change in the community. The discovery process involves a number of steps, including an in-depth process of stakeholder input that's incredibly important to us. We want to look at your current incentives programs. We want to look at all information we can possibly get our hands on about your organizations and how you relate to different groups within the community. We'll be reviewing your marketing and branding activities and looking at best practices. And from step 1, from the discovery process, we'll be meeting some of our project objectives, including making sure that we have a broad diversity of people involved in economic development, that we have insight into what the best practice communities across the country are doing, and we have a foundation for the strategy. I do want to point out with our stakeholder input that we're planning 3 trips here. During those trips, we'll be conducting 6 focus groups on topics relevant to the strategy. And we want to make sure that those focus groups include people who aren't normally included in economic development activities. We want to open up the tent, open up the doors. And we'll be conducting up to 30 interviews. We'll interview each one of you and other stakeholders that you help us identify, both in person and on the phone. And I also want to recommend that at the end of the project, once we roll out our recommendations to JEDO board, I'd like to lead a couple community conversations about our recommendations and invite the people who participated in our focus groups and interviews back to us to find out what we've recommended, and they can learn from us and how they can get involved in economic development. And we'll ask you to help us identify participants, but we'll be scheduling all of our own trips because we know that staff time is limited. On the strategy side, we'll be developing a mission and vision and goal statements for you, and then recommendations. Depending on what we hear from stakeholder input in our research, we'll be delivering an improved framework for your decisions. Again, I want to emphasize our holistic view that we'll be including factors that are go way beyond traditional economic development. We'll be looking at, for example, talent access and minority inclusion, quality of life issues, entrepreneurship, et cetera. And then we'll also be recommending an improved structure for your economic development tools, including things like your marketing activities, incentives, and your overall organizational structure. And finally, action. Again, this is going to be a strategy, not a study. We will do a rollout with you all so that you all have as much opportunity as possible to interact with us and learn about our recommendations. I also recommend, again, the workshops with your stakeholders. Metrics, very specific metrics for monitoring your performance. We'll be giving you also a timeline and a budget for implementing all of our recommendations. So finally, as the minute ticks down to our 20 minutes, I want to share with you why I think that you should hire the Avalanche and Foot Consulting team. And also, again, thank you very much for this opportunity. We have the experience. We have the experience on the economic development strategy and on the site selection side. 80 plus years of experience if you put all of us together. So we've seen a lot. We've worked in hundreds and hundreds of communities, and we know what works and what doesn't work, and we'll share that with you. We're also incredibly honest and objective. I think you've seen that from our last presentation with you. We do not hold punches. If you need to know something, we're going to tell you, and we're going to be as candid as we possibly can, because we don't think that progress can happen without that honest dialogue. We're completely invested in your future. We love Topeka. We've done so much, we've spent so much time evaluating you guys already. We're ready to take it to the next step. We're good listeners. We know how to engage people, make them feel comfortable and involved. We also believe in a very transparent process, an inclusive process. And if you talk to any of our past clients, you'll find out that our studies, our strategies lead to action and lead to major change in their communities. So it's like drinking out of a fire hydrant, isn't it?
Yeah.
Would
Okay.
you all have any questions
We have
for us?
opportunity for questions and answers, and board members. We can start. Councilwoman Claire?
What do you consider your most successful project?
Well, I'm a little biased based on an announcement that happened this week. I don't know if you all have ever followed Charleston, South Carolina, but they've been a client of ours for the last 11 years. We've done over 30 projects for them. We're considered to be their economic development strategists. We did both of their last 5-year strategies and have done dozens of projects in between. But they've been highly successful, not only with the Monday announcement of Volvo choosing Charleston for their first U.S. facility to back a few years ago when Boeing chose Charleston, but there's also a whole range of things we've done for them that have involved building up their creative class, and they're getting recognition for their arts, culture, and their foodie scene as an economic development engine, to digital, to bioscience, you name it. I'm very proud of their accomplishments. We love all our children the same, but that one this week, I woke up Monday morning with a way to go moment.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Delisla?
Thank you. I know this is going to be an awkward question. This is a typical interview question. But could you elaborate to us one project that maybe you feel like you guys missed the mark, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, that's a great interview question. Thank you so much for putting me on the spot. Admittedly, there's been a few that haven't gone as well as they could have. And no matter how hard you try, sometimes things just don't work. And I can tell you that the implementation of a strategy is a team effort. And a lot of times One of the few times that things haven't worked out. It's been an issue of some sort of leadership change in the community where, I mean, politically someone gets elected who doesn't support economic development and the whole thing gets sidetracked or offline, or I'm just going to be candid, there's local egos at play that aren't elected officials. They're just landowners or business owners, or just, there's some kind of collision in the community that stops progress from happening. And I don't want to name names in that, but I've been through the trenches with those projects as well, and we always do our best, but it's hard sometimes.
I have one along the line, we feel we're unique, to the extent that we have this county-city arrangement tax, and we have a JEDO board of directors, and we have discussed our organization, and in our resolution, that's one of the things that we like. We would like to have suggestions, ideas on how we can function better if there is or not a way. Have you had experience with any similar thing like we are in your work, and any thoughts along those lines of what? Not you have to tell us suggestions, but what your experience has been.
Sure. Well, economic development isn't a one-size-fits-all, so everything has to work with the dynamics within a community. We have done quite a bit of work with Jacksonville and Duval County in Florida, which has a similar arrangement, similar Duval County and Jacksonville together, and the JAX USA Partnership, which is their economic development initiative, which is housed within their Chamber of Commerce. So when I see your structure, I think about Jacksonville. But I'm not saying Jacksonville model is a perfect one for you, but for example, we did a 5-year strategy for JAX USA Partnership, followed by an organizational assessment, almost exactly like what you all are asking for. And last year we did an 8-month analysis of the city of Jacksonville and Duval County's incentive package, and looked at also Enterprise Florida's incentives. So very similar in dynamics to what you have here.
I'll jump in here real quickly.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Dean.
Answer that as well. I think from a site selector standpoint, we want to see that the committee works, that it all works together. We don't get too hung up on the organization so much that we're looking at committees. We just want to see a good dynamic committee that provides the kind of information that our clients need. If we see problems along the way, if it even comes up at all, it's basically a red flag. So you want to make sure it all works effectively.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Dean. Yes, ma'am.
Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you for being here, Amy. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Among the various things that you shared with us, I do appreciate your responsiveness to our resolution. One of the things in there is that you recognize is our desire to improve our poverty levels and engage minority community members in this initiative, both in the input for the initiative as well as opportunities in moving up the ladder. Could you describe a city or cities where you have done that and how it worked out?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was glad to see it in your RFP because not every community says that, and ultimately that's the goal, right? To allow everyone in your community to prosper. I will give you an example that I just referred to, but in Jacksonville, one of their priorities was to engage a neighborhood and area of the city that was disadvantaged. It had never been involved in economic development. And that was really important to the mayor of Jacksonville. So we spent quite a bit of time with that community looking at what resources they had there close to the residents that could become engines for them to get better educated or access to entrepreneurial resources. And it also became, because it was such a priority to them, it became a value that they considered in their incentives, and it was a bonus, for example, for a company to locate in that area. So they were doing their very best, using every tool they could to drive businesses to that area, or at least have them consider that. And I think it's been successful. It starts with opening the door and engaging people.
Thank you.
You have another question, Deputy Mayor?
I do, but I'm willing to take
Yeah,
my
well,
turn
I
if
see
somebody else
another
has
one.
got
Go ahead.
one. We also, you mentioned that you've observed that we really want to look at a broad brush plan, and you just mentioned a couple of examples. Can you talk about how, from what you know of us, what kind of elements you think would appear in a master strategic plan for us?
Ooh, so that's a trick question.
It wasn't intended to be. But it's important to us that we want that broad brush view from the, we're not looking to hire somebody to do it for us right now. We're looking for somebody to help us vision that and look at best practices everywhere
Right.
so that we can broaden our own vision. So,
And with a holistic definition of economic development, there are so many factors that could be included in a strategy. And those factors are kind of whittled down and prioritized through that discovery process. What are we hearing a lot about? What are the needs here? Let's address the challenges and make sure that the limited resources that we have are going to things that are really going to catalyze improvements in our economy. And we're not just trying to go after everything out there, do everything for everybody. In your community, I would go back to the research. This is all I know right now is the numbers that we've looked at. But I think that talent, retention and attraction should be a priority of the strategy. And what does that mean? That has all sorts of legs. What are you doing entrepreneurially with continuing to advance entrepreneurship here to keep them here? What are we doing about quality of life and making this a place that's just incredibly vibrant and interesting to people? What are we doing about career opportunities? All of that. I would say that would be a component of your strategy. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but also I would like to see more, a greater diversity of involvement in economic development and making sure that this is an open process that everyone feels comfortable becoming involved with. And also making sure that those target industries that we recommended are solid targets, but we need to be structured in a way that makes us the most competitive place in the country for those industries. And there's things that we can do about your structure and your toolkit that'll make you be that.
I do have one more about
Okay, go ahead.
performance metrics were another reason that we wanted to get some assistance. We wanted to be able to measure our success. Could you talk a little bit about performance metrics and how one does that?
Yeah, again, they're driven by the goals of the strategy and the vision. So I don't know what exactly they're going to be for you right now, but I'll tell you from our perspective, we think of performance metrics more as wellness indicators. And that means that they go beyond just job creation and capital investment. Those are important factors. There's also other factors that we should be monitoring, especially those that are associated with some of the challenges that we have here. So I would want to look at some talent-related metrics, quality of life metrics, and so forth. So we try to be, again, more holistic with the metrics that we're using because it's important to gauge the temperature of many different things, not just job creation.
Yeah. Councilwoman Del Isla.
Thank you, Mayor Wilgas. In the slideshows, one of the things that was discussed is poverty and how it affects economic development. Could you share some best practices that you've seen in other communities being utilized to capitalize and learn about what is driving poverty in a community and how you use economic development tools to create a bridge for success for both, sides, the people that are coming in and for the individuals that are trying to move away from poverty?
Oh my gosh, yes. There's again, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. It depends on the nature of the community. I'll give you our most kind of hands-on, on-the-ground experience with, we got hired by a community in the Houston area who just wanted us to focus on improving conditions for their poor. And we worked with community leaders to create a combined education and social service community center and connect that with daycare, language classes, and transportation options so that they had kind of a one-stop shop for everybody who wanted to advance themselves. They didn't have to navigate typically very complicated service world and education world, right? But also within the economic development community, I think, and your targets need to provide job opportunities for everyone from GED to PhD. And the targets that we've recommended to you all attempt to do that. What the other side of the coin is that we need to make sure that there are accessible education and training options for people who have little skills or have been unemployed or underemployed for a very long time. And then addressing things like access to childcare, transportation, et cetera, so that folks can get employed and get to the training facilities that they need. So I would want to learn a lot more about the situation here other than just the data that we've looked at, but there are solutions, and I'd like to consider them as part of the strategy.
Okay, any other, Councilman Cohen?
Thank you, Mayor. We realize that we can't do everything for everybody, but who monitors those successes and the failures? Is that you, or do we do that?
Once the strategy is complete,
Mm-hmm.
we would love to help you with that, and we do that for other clients, for sure. I think it kind of depends on how the organizational assessment works out and our recommendations, and how you guys look a year from now might mean that you have additional staff support or something to help you with that monitoring of progress.
Under this current organization, we're kind of like a business, like a board of a business, but we have no staff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of our dilemma.
That would be something we would want to discuss with you and consider as an option in the future, if it's an issue.
Yeah.
Are we good? We're on time, or?
Yeah, we're down to about 36 minutes at this point, so a couple more questions if we have. Deputy Mayor?
Well, also in the broadening the categories, we have had interest in economic development advisors who could tell us how a downtown fits, and we've also had sections of towns and neighborhoods that wanted to revitalize neighborhood-based retail and commercial. Have you done any of that, and have you included those things in plans?
We're not urban planners.
Okay.
I'll just say that is not our area of expertise, and you don't want us telling you what to put block by block. But we do think that it's very difficult to have a thriving economy if you don't have a thriving downtown. So, I mean, that's opening the kimono, that's where we're coming from. So we'll make it a priority, and we'll make sure that you have the tools needed in terms of if it's incentives or policies or regulatory environment that allows those areas of town to thrive as much as they can.
Yeah, maybe I shouldn't have put the downtown in it. There have been neighborhoods and sections of town that have wanted to revitalize existing retail too. So,
Same thing. I mean, it's targeting those areas of town, and then we can look at your toolkit, but we can't make pretty pictures.
Thank you.
Okay. Other final questions? Would you like to close? One more, or Dean?
Well, I just want to say thank you very much. It's nice to be back in town, albeit a quick trip, and I hope we have the opportunity to work together. I'd love to be able to spend more time here and really get up to that higher level and that bigger picture of your organization. Dean, any last remarks?
Thanks, everybody, and I hope to see everybody soon.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your proposal and the presentation.
You're very welcome.
You got the-
See you later.
The phone.
All right.
All right,
you.
we'll have an exchange take place. The air's turn. And it's more, do you see that?
Oh, yeah, because I brought my sweater.
Yeah.
It's freezing.
Yeah, I forget, and typically, we do remember, but, you know, somebody remembers, but it's just, you know. Oh, it's difficult. You have to know in advance. and-
Oh, I see.
You take a minute to prepare,
Okay, thank
get
you.
up everything on.
Y'all should try sitting out there sometime.
Thank you.
Good pictures. Yeah.
We'll share.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr.
well,
Jay
thank you.
Garner of Garner Economics, we're ready to hear from you.
All right, Mayor, thank you. Members of the City Council and County Commission, thank you for the invitation. And as we say in Middle Georgia, how y'all? So it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for our opportunity to talk about the value proposition that Garner Economics brings to Topeka and Shawnee County. So I have the presentation that we passed out, and you can follow along with our dialogue if that's of some help. A little bit about who we are. My firm is a economic development strategy and site location firm. We're based in Atlanta, Georgia. And based on your RFP, we also ask Brand Acceleration to participate in this process too. They are a marketing, branding, and communication firm that specializes in work with economic development organizations. And you called for that in your RFP. We have worked with them in the past, so we thought they would be a good partner in this process. What makes Garner Economics unique in this capacity? We are creative and innovative in everything we do, but we also offer pragmatic, realistic results and give you expectations that you can manage and achieve. Everything that we offer has an actionable, executable strategy to it. We're not engaged in offering 30,000-foot view looks at something, because that really doesn't do anybody any good unless you're doing a visioning effort, which this is not what you're asking for. And then, of course, every project that we're engaged in is different. And so we recognize that we want to manage that process. And so all of those projects that we're engaged in are client-oriented. And we approach those with the common goals and synergies to achieve what you want to do. This is the core team that will be engaged in the project. I am the project lead on every engagement I'm involved in, since my company, my name is on the company, it's my reputation, so I'm involved in every one as that lead. You'll see more of me than anyone else as part of it. To my right, next to me, is Jim Walton with Brand Acceleration out of Indianapolis, and he would be engaged with the marketing and communication aspect of this. Below me is David Vercel. He is an economist with our company, and he would be engaged in the performance metrics and benchmarks that we will be discussing here momentarily. And then next to David is Tina Vadakanyas, and she is a strategist with our company, a brilliant woman who's engaged in every project that we're engaged in. And she'll be with me on a lot of the stakeholder engagement as we manage that process. Together, we have 65 years of experience working with both the public and private sectors. I have been involved in the economic development profession for 35 years. It's all I've done ever since I got out of graduate school. So 22 of those years as a practitioner, running economic development organizations in places like Mobile, Alabama, and Asheville, North Carolina, Chattanooga, Tennessee, all award-winning economic development groups. And then in the last 13 years, running and owning my own location advisory and strategy firm. I point that out because in your RFP, you have asked for organizational assessment and recommendations for JEDO. And I just don't know how anyone can do that effectively unless they have that CEO experience of running an economic development organization, which I do. So, and as part of that, and I'm proud of this, the Chamber of Commerce that I ran in Asheville back in the 90s was the first chamber in the United States to win a quality award from the North Carolina Quality Foundation based on the National Malcolm Baldrige criteria. So in every project that we are engaged in, whether it's from the private sector or the public sector, we apply total quality management and continuing process improvement principles in all of our work. That's very important. Out of the blue, 2 weeks ago, I got recognized by Southern Business and Development magazine as one of the 10 people who have made a difference in the world of economic development, both as a practitioner and as a consultant, and so that was very kind of them and a nice surprise. My firm has a staff of 5. We're a boutique firm. We don't try to be everything to everybody. This is what we're good at. Either in the location advisory business, our specialty is in the food and beverage sector, which is, of course, a great fit for Topeka and Shawnee County, or on the economic development side in strategy work that we do. Have a branch office. I'm based in Atlanta, but I have a branch office in the Research Triangle Park area, which is where Tina Valdecañas is based. And we have representative offices in Berlin, Germany, and in Seoul, Korea. I am a founding member of the Site Selectors Guild, and it's the top 36 consultants globally. Just recently went off as the vice chair and as a board member of the guild. So those the guild is peer selected, the best of the best, representing major consulting firms like Deloitte and IBM, Cushman & Wakefield, and then boutique firms like mine. And then, as I mentioned before, I've had my business now for 13 years. So a little bit about who we are, and here's the team structure that we talked about. I'll be the project lead and already have mentioned who would be engaged in what components. So, again, some work that we've done around the country. As you can see, some of the representative sample of our clients. Proud to say that I've done work here in this market. In 2003, we were engaged to do a market assessment of what was then called South Commerce Park. It is now called the Central Crossing Commerce Park, before it had anybody in it. So I'm glad to see that that has worked out well. And then in 2006, we were engaged by both Go Topeka and JEDO, because there were JEDO members on the selection committee, that hired our firm to be the lead on a comprehensive economic development strategy. And so I'm familiar with the market, and I came in earlier today to reacquaint myself with the market and to see what has changed and what hasn't changed. So that's been a good review. Whenever we are engaged in a project like this, we do our homework. We want to learn about your community, have a better feel for it. And of course, I've looked at the website. I've seen the past meetings online with JEDO, always reading the media to get a catch up of what are some of the issues. So I have an understanding of what's going on. And so I've asked our economists to put together, just for my benefit, what you may know, what you may not know, some relevant items as it relates to the economic health or ills of Shawnee County. And this is an interesting slide because I had mentioned that we did our comprehensive economic development strategy, which was delivered in December of 2006. And then the national recession started in January of 2007. It ended in July of 2009, and you defied the national recession. And I started thinking, initially a little facetiously, and then maybe not so facetious, that perhaps our work had a little bit of a role in the fact that you defied that recession if you look at the employment change in Shawnee County compared to Kansas and the U.S. An economic development strategy typically has a shelf life of about 4 years. And then you can see that as Kansas and the U.S. came out of the recession, you went into it. So, and as a result of that, you're not trending as well as the U.S. You have a little bit most recently, but as you can see on that last bar, now you're floating below the state of Kansas as well as the U.S. Since the recession on employment changes, in Shawnee County, your largest employment sector is healthcare and social assistance. And that is not seeing the job growth that it has once seen. Administrative and support is. You're moderately flat in manufacturing, and of course, job losses in public administration. And then this shows average annual wages. And Shawnee County is lagging behind the state of Kansas and the U.S. So I have a benchmarking that we do where we compare all 3,141 counties in the United States. And in terms of average wage per job, you rank 622. So not as bad as some people have said. Your largest sector, of course, is in the healthcare and social assistance at 18.4%, and you rank very, very well in the number of jobs in that capacity. You rank 271 out of 3,141 counties. So that kind of gives you a little bit of flavor. And median age and age distribution, you have an older population in Shawnee County than you do for the state of Kansas and for the U.S. So kind of, again, just gives us a flavor of what we're dealing with as it relates to the economic vitality of Topeka and Shawnee County. So your RFP asked for an assessment that included an organizational analysis, benchmarking, incentive policy assessment, and marketing communications audit. So it's not a typical strategic plan. And so I want to make sure that we're all on the same page as it relates to expectations. And then as a part of that, you also asked for strategies and recommendations, including metrics and performance benchmarks. So how are we going to achieve what you've asked for? So we'll do that in 3 ways. We'll assess, we'll recommend, and then we'll implement. And the assess includes looking at the organization, and that would be JEDO, and then your affiliated partners. In this case, you have a contract with Go Topeka, so we're going to have to assess them, and that's part of the partnerships. And we'll look at your regional brands, since you've asked for some dialogue on communication. We'll make recommendations as it relates to the JEDO structure and programming, incentives to make sure that you have a very effective incentive initiative. I've reviewed what you have now, and I think it's a very good program. Can also be tweaked and modified based on your goals and objectives. And then messaging to sell the region globally. And then implement what I've seen, read, observed, watched, is how important it is for all of you to have outstanding economic development service delivery. That's what you're asking for. How do you get there? How do you achieve that? And then again, coming back to making recommendations on incentives, telling your story externally and internally, which I don't think you've done a very good job at doing, and then measuring success through benchmarks, metrics, and organizational monitoring. Okay? So what we always do is before we make recommendations is to learn from you. And we do that through stakeholder engagement. Now, in the original proposal, we had that we would do 4 focus groups. And then after watching the video, reading the media, I see how important it is for you to enhance that. We said in the original proposal that we would do 4 focus groups, which typically is about 80 to 100 people. And then we also said that we were going to do a broad electronic survey to the public as a whole, which would be typically promoted on your 2 respective websites, and then the local media would help promote it too. When we do something like that in other communities, we may see as few as a few hundred respond to it. Or in the case of a county in North Carolina, we had about 2,000 respond to it. So it just depends on the personality and the dynamic of the community. But in this case, we said we're going to do 6 focus groups. So we're growing that from 4 to 6 based on your needs and your desires. And then we added doing it what we call a community listening session, which is also referred to by many as a town hall meeting, so that we can capture what a number of people have to say about the economic vitality of Topeka and Shawnee counties, especially as it relates to economic development service delivery. And then, of course, we're still doing the electronic survey to a broad audience. So in our vision, mission, and organizational analysis, we're going to conduct an organizational audit of JEDO and go to Topeka. We're going to assess the overall roles and responsibilities, and we're going to understand your contractual relationships and non-contractual relationships with other economic development organizations. Okay? And then on the benchmarking, and this is just for illustrative purposes only, what isn't illustrative is we're going to benchmark you to these key subjects that I have on the left-hand side, which would be, or key variables, which would be mission, funding, governance, the structure, performance metrics, and results. All those other bullets are just for illustrative examples. But the chart on the right gives you a flavor of then how we benchmark that. We compare you to other best practice efforts around the country with a rating scale of minimum to best in class. And then we get into the incentive policy statement, that's or assessment, that's your actual incentive policy that we were able to capture. We're going to look at the approach to make sure that what you have is working to create and retain quality jobs, broaden and diversify the tax base, encourage investment, increase your competitiveness, and promote the growth and well-being of Topeka and Shawnee County. And then this is where Jim comes in on the branding side. His expertise, of course, is on the external, and we're going to be looking at what you're doing primarily through Growth Topeka, because that's who your contract is with, on most effective activities in telling your story globally, least effective activities, recommended messaging and marketing, and then look at your brand profiling to talk about, is it the right brand for your feelings, your thoughts, and emotions. He and I will work together on the internal being what can JEDO do more effectively to communicate what you're doing so that the general populace has an understanding of your mission, your goals, your successes, your achievements, and so that you're not playing defense all the time as it relates to what you need to do as it relates to JEDO's mission, and then make those recommendations on internal messaging. So here's what you get with the recommendations. You get recommendations on vision and mission, the initiatives to sustain or grow your competitive advantage. We're going to look at barriers that need to be removed and policy changes that should be sought to allow you to use these public funds for economic development the most judiciously and cost effectively. And we need to make recommendations to strengthen your existing incentive program, provide organizational recommendations for best practice service delivery, very important, and identify the most effective and efficient ways to tell your story globally, and then how JEDO is communicating its effectiveness to your local constituents. On the potential metrics, again, these are just partial and sample categories, but we do a lot of benchmarking. We've done it for so many different economic development groups that it's just kind of natural for us. So these are typically the subjects that we're focused on, and that's the internal metrics, the economic development organization program metrics, relationship management, and then community indicators. And of course, all of those bullets that you see are modified based on the personality and the characteristics of the community. We've already talked about the deliverables and what you would get within those deliverables. And then we say that we can do this work that you have prescribed in your RFP in 16 weeks. Let me finish up because I wanted to get through this, and I apologize for being rather fast in my dialogue, but I have always found it's much more productive to engage in productive mutual dialogue than to stand up here and tout all this stuff. My mom taught me right and said, don't stand up and start bragging about yourself, because no one will take you seriously. So I've never been comfortable standing up telling folks how good we are. I have no problem with my clients saying that, however. And so here's 4 testimonials, one of which I want to point out to you because it too is from a municipality, and that's the fellow on the right-hand side, John Engen, who is the mayor of Missoula, Montana. And I didn't know much about Missoula, and he heard about me, called me up a few years back, talked to me for a few hours about doing an economic development strategy, and then brought me out and then engaged my firm to do so. And he was a former newspaper editor who turned mayor, and they have a full-time mayor. His quote says it all, that I and my team deliver advice based on experience and a real sense of place. His respect for place and his no-nonsense approach sets him apart from consultants with a one-size-fits-all style and a knack for telling clients what they want to hear as opposed what they need to hear. If you engage me, you may not like what you hear, but it's for the benefit of you as my client, so that you too can be best in class in providing what you need to do to enhance the economic vitality of this community, this city, and this county. We would love to work with you in that regard. So with that, folks, I'll stop there and let's see what questions you have.
Thank you
Thank
for the
you.
presentation very much.
Thank you.
I look forward to some questions, and I'll ask one first, and
Yes,
that
sir.
is, with the unique situation of the city and county working together as a one board and then contracting with an organization to provide the economic development. Have you had similar experience? Have you had experience with similar situations with that type of an arrangement in your work?
Yeah, Mayor, that is not unique. That happens often. What is unique is the fact that you have a dedicated sales tax funding for this, which is really the Texas model of economic development, where they allow, based on their constitution, cities to vote on that. So you have so many cities in Texas that do that. But having the public-private partnership and the cities and counties working together in tandem for economic development is not unique. I see it often. I see it more often than not.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Councilwoman Claire.
What do you consider your most successful project?
As a consultant,
Yes.
wow, that's a great question. You know, councilperson, whenever we are engaged in this and we give a client measurable recommendations, it thrills us to see them implement. And in the 13 years of the about 100 or so different projects we've done, we've only seen, I think, 2 where nothing transpired. And it didn't happen because it's all about leadership. And so there were staff changes, there were board changes that prevented it from occurring. But a couple of different examples that come to mind. We did a strategy project in Newton County, Georgia, which is a distant suburb of Atlanta. And we were working with them on some aspirational targets in the life sciences sector. And a year later, Baxter came to that community and did a $2 billion project, part of our strategy recommendations. A number of them, of our projects that we do on the strategy side, again, that's not what this is, talked about community improvement, building capacity in the community. So working with Lynchburg, Virginia to build their aircraft maintenance repair sector has been very rewarding. So there's a lot of them out there. We have on our website testimonials that from clients that have talked about how they have achieved those goals from the work that we've done. That's what's rewarding.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilman Shum?
Thank you. What advantages would you, being an active member of the Site Selection Guild, bring to JEDO?
Well, I don't think it really has anything to do with being a guild member per se. What I think it matters is being a location advisor or a site selection person. And here's why I say that. When you're trying to attract investment from the outside, you have 2 customers. You have companies that are looking at Shawnee County, and you have consultants who are representing companies. And so I represent those companies. And so I understand what the customer is looking for. So I'm a customer, but ultimately the company that's making the investment decision is the end user. So I will take that knowledge and apply it to all of the organizational and communication aspects related to our proposal and what you asked for in the RFP. The Site Selectors Guild component does nothing except show that I'm credible in the location advisory capacity. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to be a member of the Site Selectors Guild.
Councilman Del Isla?
Mr. Garner, thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you.
Based on what you shared with us on your expertise and years of experience, what is your definition of economic development? I think that I've noticed that everybody has a very different definition.
Yeah.
And when you do that definition, could it be possible for you to tell me, just in bullet points, what are the 3 key things that are the mix, in your experience, that make economic development successful in the community?
Absolutely, and I need you to come to one of my Civic Club speeches called "Are We on the Same Page? What Makes Good Communities Great?" Because I have a slide specifically to define what economic development is, and I'm all about keeping it simple. And that is, economic development is one thing, that's wealth building. What it takes for the citizens of the community to have a better standard of living than what they may have now. It's all about wealth building. How do you achieve that? And that's the other part of that slide. And you basically are achieving wealth building through economic development in 3 different ways. The hunters, that's the recruitment. That includes not only what gets all the media attention of industry recruitment, but it could be retail, It could be tourism. When I ran the Asheville, North Carolina Chamber, and I had a staff of 42, 30 of them were in the Convention and Visitor Bureau. In Asheville, North Carolina, tourism in the hospitality sector is economic development. You know, so it could be retail, tourism. Then the second one is outside of hunters would be the gardeners. That's the entrepreneurial development. That's where most of the new jobs are coming from in today's world. And then the third would be nurturers, and that's your existing business. And people have said it's kind of an urban lore that 80% of all new jobs are through existing business. It's really about 50%. And so when you have a holistic approach of the hunters, the gardeners, and the nurturers, you have an effective economic development effort. It's all about wealth building.
Can I follow up?
Sure,
Mayor?
go ahead.
Thank you for that. Where does the community fit in this? I hear the business sector being mentioned, but where do you see the community being a stakeholder in the economic development process?
Well, the community is in economic development, it's all about the community. You're not going to have effective economic development unless you have a community that is attractive for investment to occur. So they have to be engaged, they have to be part of the whole process, they have to participate in the product improvement of the community. It's the means to achieve the end. That they're just part of that whole overarching example of engaging the community to achieve the results. If you don't have that type of community that is conducive for investment, they're going to go elsewhere. And you know, and that underscores, I think the council person has a great question in that regard. It underscores the reason why, if I'm engaged, I probably need to do that "Are we on the same page?" presentation, because it does give the community a great overview of what economic development takes and for what you need to do to succeed in a very competitive market. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
One of the things, I was pleased to hear you in your presentation talk about upping the number of focus groups and community engagement. I don't know if it was clear, but part of our vision out of the meetings we've had and out of the resolution that we passed was that we really want to broaden the engagement in those focus groups from truly all sectors of the community. And it's important to us as part of that package to address poverty and also minority involvement, minority and other, well, any minority class of group, to make sure that they're engaged in the planning as well as in the opportunities that that system provides. Could you talk a little bit about your vision of engaging folks in that system, as well as in the planning system, as well as experience that you have had in that kind of broad brush involvement in the past?
The town hall meeting will indeed do that if you're able to get people to come out for the town hall meeting, the community listening session. We will manage that process, as a professional facilitators, but it will allow us to learn from them based on questions that we have as it relates to the economic vitality of this community and what are the issues that need to be addressed. In fact, I have one of the slides that talked about stakeholder engagement was specific on the types of questions that we would ask. For the focus groups, what we've said, and everywhere that we go, is there are certain categories of people that we have to hear from because they are engaged in either driving business opportunities to a community or away from a community. And there's about 4 of those. And then we also say that if we're expanding it, in this case we are, then we want to be able to engage other groups that are unique or necessary for a community. So in this instance, you know, you'll help us identify and invite those that are representing those constituent groups that you've talked about. So they'll be engaged through the community listening effort, through one of 6 focus groups, and through a public survey that they may or may not participate in electronically based on their ability to have access to the internet and to filling out a survey.
And the second half of that question was whether you had done that before.
Oh.
If you could give us an example.
Yes, we have, and a good example of that would be West Monroe, Louisiana, where we have, we did this exact same methodology that we're talking about right now with the community listening session and with expanded focus groups. The public survey is sort of our standard operating procedure. We do that everywhere we go. Based on a community's budget, the number of focus groups fluctuate, again, based on the budget. And so, but to answer your question is absolutely, that's, it's not unusual, and we've done that. Wilmington, North Carolina is another place where we did something very similar just a year and a half ago, which is New Hanover County.
Councilman Cohen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We realize that we can't do everything for everybody, but down the road, who monitors the successes and the failures, and who monitors those ongoing metrics?
You do. You're the policy board. We're going to give you those metrics, but as the policy board and as leaders, it's incumbent upon you to monitor them. So the onus is on you. You have the tools, you'll have the tools to do it effectively.
Can you still make a unbiased assessment since you've worked for JEDO and Go Topeka?
Oh, I haven't done any work for JEDO and Go Topeka in 9 years. The players have all changed. I've just recently met Scott in person today. And the only person who I have knowledge of for a number of years, because in this profession, it's all about relationships. And having been in for 35 years, I call it a large sorority, half fraternity, half sorority, because it's gender neutral. It would be Jim Colson. He's the only person who I've known, because he is a excellent economic developer who I've known for, as an acquaintance for, I guess, 15 years or so. Otherwise, I have no bias. In fact, when I came in today, Scott was kind enough to offer to show me around and to reacquaint myself with the community. I declined his offer. I did that because I did it. I went and drove around myself. I did that because I didn't want any appearance of any potential bias out there. It was very kind of him to do that, but I wouldn't want to take on a project if there was any instance at all where I would be being accused of having favorites or bias towards one way or the other. That's not me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilman Shum?
Thank you, Mr. Garner. You put an emphasis in your presentation on improving the messaging of JEDO. Could you tell us about some past successes you may have had with increasing the public's confidence in an organization like JEDO?
I have not been engaged with an organization that probably hasn't communicated the message internally as poorly as JEDO. So as a result of that, I can't use it as a benchmark. And so what we've done would be make recommendations that would allow them to enhance what they're doing in an average or mediocre way, and you're not there.
And we are down to our time frame. Is there one or more questions in Councilman de Isla?
Mr. Garner, you said that you did your homework before coming over here. And just by looking at a glance at our community, and what would you feel are like the number one and number two issues that we would have to tackle if you were to get the job so that we could hit the ground running?
Well, I'm going to answer that two different ways, if I may. One as it relates to your RFP, and the other one would be wearing my hat as a site location consultant that facilitates investment decision. And that doesn't have anything to do with this RFP. But there are still, so let me take that one first because that's an easy one. You still have some fundamental issues where the community doesn't show well aesthetically. There's some enhancements that haven't been made as it regards to community improvement, community enhancement. You know, site locations consultants have the name of we're site location consultants, but it's a misnomer. We're really site elimination consultants. We're looking for reasons to eliminate you, not to keep you, and it's survival of the fittest. And you've had some great success. I mean, you know, remember in 2003 when I was doing the market assessment, there was no Target, there was no Home Depot, you've had no Mars, you know, you've had no Bimbo Foods, et cetera, so you've had some great success. You've also lost some projects. So there are those kinds of things. Now, to get to the RFP, the biggest issue to develop would be to work in an organizational structure, making an organizational structure that's going to be trusted and respected by both the local community and potential investors. So you're going to have either through your contractor, outstanding economic development service delivery, you're not there, you're not best in class, you're average. And then on the JEDO governance side, whatever you come up with, it's got to be something that is communicated more effectively so that you create trust. And once you create trust, then all the other noise starts to go away.
Okay, yes,
Could I have a
sure.
follow-up? I hear a lot of bringing in primary employers.
Yeah.
Where do you see that we stand when it comes to small business development and entrepreneurship?
Well, say that one more time.
That I hear a lot of information about looking at sites so that we can bring businesses to our community.
Right.
But where do you feel that we fare as a community with regards to small business development and entrepreneurship?
Well, I think you have to enhance that significantly. Remember I said earlier that to have an effective economic development program, it's a holistic approach. It's the entrepreneurial, it's the recruitment that not only is industry attraction, but all these other things like retail and hospitality, and then of course it's your existing business. And you know, I'm not seeing where you have those effective programs that are nurturing that kind of investment. I'm a big believer that successful economic development programs that's a whole lot more than trying to attract primary jobs. If you just focus on that, then you know, all the other large job opportunities in entrepreneurship and helping your existing businesses are going to wither away. So it's got to be everything. That's what we're going to address in the JEDO organizational assessment and what you need to do to be more effective in that holistic economic development approach. But whomever you hire, make sure that you don't focus solely on primary jobs. That's an old school thought that went out in the 80s. Okay? And we're way past the 80s. I can tell. I used to be young, not anymore. I started in the 80s. Okay?
Okay,
Yes, sir.
I think that completes presentation, our question and answer. Do you have a final comment you wish to make to us?
I will, and thank you, Mayor, and again, everyone, for the opportunity to be here. What you're asking for in the RFP is what we're good at. We would be a valued partner to you. We would not, if you engage us, we wouldn't want you to treat us as your vendor or provider. Instead, we want to be a valued member of your team. And we want to be able to help JEDO rise to the next level. You've got a wonderful opportunity right now. You have changes occurring within your contractual relationships. You have a blank canvas. Now is an opportunity to take advantage of that blank canvas and to make something that takes you to that next level, so that when we're out talking about best practices, then someday, sooner than later, then we could talk about Topeka and Shawnee County as best practices. That's what we'd like to help you get to that point. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Board, I suggest we take about a 5-minute break to just change gears here for a little bit before we go into the next agenda item. So in about 5 minutes.